The medical bay. The gleaming white corridor of Stellar Medical Station Gamma stretched before Dr. Sarah Chen like a sterile runway to her future. Her magnetic boots clicked softly against the metal flooring as she made her way toward orientation, each step a reminder that she wasn't in Boston General anymore. The space station's artificial gravity maintained a steady 0.8 Earth normal, just enough difference to make her feel slightly lighter, slightly bolder. The assignment to Gamma Station had raised eyebrows among her colleagues back on Earth. Why would one of humanity's most promising trauma surgeons choose to work on a medical station at the edge of known space? But Sarah knew exactly why. Here, at the crossroads of a dozen alien species, medicine wasn't just about following established protocols. It was about innovation, adaptation, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The medical bay doors parted with a soft hiss, revealing organized chaos. Various beings, some humanoid, others decidedly not, moved purposefully between diagnostic beds and treatment stations. The air carried an odd mix of antiseptic and something vaguely floral, likely some alien disinfectant. Dr. Chen. The melodic voice seemed to resonate in Sarah's chest before reaching her ears. Welcome to Gamma Station. Sarah turned and found herself face to face with the most striking being she'd ever encountered. The alien stood slightly taller than her, with skin that seemed to ripple with subtle patterns of bioluminescence beneath a translucent surface. Currently, it pulsed with gentle blues and greens that somehow conveyed both professional authority and genuine warmth. I am Head Nurse Six Sarah, but please call me Six. I'll be your primary liaison here in the medical bay. The Luminaron's facial features were almost human-like, save for the slightly larger eyes that seemed to contain swirling galaxies of silver. I trust your journey from Earth was comfortable. As comfortable as 2 weeks in cryo can be, Sarah replied, managing a smile despite her lingering awe. Though I have to admit, the matrix regeneration afterward gave me one hell of a headache. Zix's skin flickered with patterns that Sarah would later learn indicated amusement. Ah yes, human neural systems can be particularly sensitive to the process. Perhaps next time we can try our Luminoran restoration protocols instead. They're generally gentler on organic neural networks. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the medical bay. Zix's skin instantly shifted to alert patterns of amber and white. Perfect timing, Doctor. Ready for your first case. 3 emergency teams burst through the doors, floating a writhing mass of tentacles on a gravity gurney. What Sarah initially took for movement turned out to be severe convulsions racking the creature's body. Kraken Merchant Captain, Zix explained quickly as they rushed to the trauma bay. Suffered catastrophic decompression during a hull breach. Multiple system failure imminent. Sarah's training kicked in as she assessed the situation. Vital signs. That's the challenge with Kraken physiology, Zix replied, her hands dancing over the medical interfaces. They have 3 cardiac analogs and a distributed nervous system. Standard human monitoring protocols. Won't work, Sarah finished, already seeing the problem. She pulled up the station's xenobiology database on the nearest screen, scanning rapidly through Kraken physiological data. We need to stabilize all 3 hearts simultaneously or risk cascade failure. Zix's skin pulsed with what seemed like approval. Exactly. Traditional approach would be sequential stabilization, but with these readings. We don't have time for traditional, Sarah interrupted, her mind racing. What if we modified a human cardioversion technique? Use synchronized pulses across all 3 cardiac centers. The Luminaran's eyes widened slightly. That's never been attempted with Kraken physiology. The energy requirements alone would be massive, yes, but if we calibrate the pulses to match their natural resonance frequency. Sarah's fingers flew over the interface, making rapid calculations. Zix studied the numbers for a split second, her skin now glowing with intense focus. It could work, but the timing would have to be perfect. A millisecond off in any direction, then we'll be perfect, Sarah said with quiet confidence. Ready? The next few minutes were a blur of coordinated action. Sarah found herself working in perfect sync with Zix, as if they'd been partners for years instead of minutes. The Luminauron's movements were precise and graceful, anticipating Sarah's needs before she could voice them. When the final pulse was delivered, the entire trauma bay held its breath. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the Kraken's cardiac centers stabilized, falling into a steady rhythm. Remarkable, Zix breathed, her skin now pulsing with excited patterns of blue and gold. I've never seen anyone adapt human medical techniques to alien physiology so quickly. Sarah allowed herself a small smile as she checked the captain's stabilizing vital signs. Sometimes the best solutions come from combining different perspectives. I have a feeling that's going to be a running theme here on Gamma Station. As they began post-crisis procedures, Sarah noticed something odd. Zix's usual smooth movements seemed slightly off, her luminescence patterns flickering with unexpected colors. When their hands brushed while adjusting monitoring equipment, Sarah felt an unusual warmth emanating from the Luminauron's skin. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked, professional concern creeping into her voice. "Of course," Zix replied, perhaps a bit too quickly. Just excited to have such a capable new colleague. But as she turned away, Sarah caught a glimpse of deep purple rippling across the nurse's skin, a color she hadn't seen before. Something told her that her time on Gamma Station was going to be far more interesting than she'd imagined. As she continued her work, Sarah had no idea just how right that instinct would prove to be, or how soon she would find herself facing a medical crisis unlike anything in human experience. The Kraken captain's tentacles had settled into a peaceful rhythm, but this was just the beginning. Above them, Gamma Station continued its eternal orbit, while inside its walls, biological imperatives far older than human civilization were beginning to stir. The heat begins. The quarantine barriers had been up for 6 hours when Sarah finally found what she was looking for. Buried deep in the xenobiology database's restricted sections, hidden behind layers of diplomatic encryption, was a single file on Luminauron reproductive biology. What she read made her blood run cold. Every 50 years, Luminaurons underwent a biological process called the illumination, a massive surge of bioenergetic activity that triggered their reproductive cycle. During this period, their usually controlled bioluminescence would build to dangerous levels, releasing waves of energy that could interfere with sensitive equipment. More importantly, the process was typically triggered by specific environmental conditions on their homeworld. Warning, the station's AI announced, interrupting Sarah's research. Critical systems failure detected in Medical Section C, backup power engaged. Sarah's head snapped up as the lights flickered. Medical Section C, where Zix had disappeared hours ago. The quarantine barriers hummed ominously as she approached the environmental controls. "Computer, give me Nurse Zixara's vital signs." Access denied. Luminauron medical privacy protocols in effect. Sarah gritted her teeth. "Computer, as Chief Medical Officer of this station, I need to know if any personnel are in medical distress." A pause. Warning. Luminauron life signs showing dangerous elevation in bioenergetic output. Current levels exceed safety parameters by 300% and rising. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The illumination wasn't supposed to happen for another 20 years according to Luminauron biological schedules. Something had triggered it early, and she had a sinking feeling she knew what. The database had mentioned that certain chemical signatures could accelerate the cycle, particularly those from compatible species. Like humans. The lights flickered again, more violently this time. Through the quarantine barrier's transparent sections, Sarah could see pulses of brilliant light emanating from Medical Section C, accompanied by the sound of medical equipment shorting out. Computer, location of other Luminauron personnel. All Luminauron staff successfully evacuated to containment facilities on lower level 8, except head nurse Zixara, who refused transport. Sarah's mind raced. The other Luminarans must have recognized the early warning signs and evacuated, but Zix had stayed to help with the miners, stayed to do her duty. And now she was trapped in an accelerating biological process that threatened both her life and the station's systems. The quarantine barrier suddenly crackled with energy as something slammed against it from the other side. Sarah jumped back, her heart pounding. Through the transparent panel, she saw Zix, but not the composed, professional nurse she knew. The Luminoran's skin was blazing with light that hurt to look at directly, patterns of color shifting so rapidly they blurred together. Her normally sleek form seemed to ripple with barely contained energy. Sarah, Zix's voice carried harmonics that made the barrier vibrate. You need to get out of here. I can't control it much longer. I'm not leaving you, Sarah said firmly, already pulling up emergency medical protocols on her tablet. Your bioenergetic levels are off the charts. You're going into acute systemic shock. You don't understand. Zix pressed her hands against the barrier, leaving glowing prints that slowly faded. This isn't a medical condition you can treat. It's... She convulsed suddenly, her skin flaring so bright that Sarah had to shield her eyes. Warning klaxons blared as more systems began to fail. The quarantine barrier's power fluctuated, its field wavering dangerously. Nurse Sixara's condition is affecting critical station infrastructure, the AI reported. Emergency protocols recommend immediate space evacuation of Medical Section C. Belay that order, Sarah snapped. She wouldn't abandon her colleague, her friend, to be ejected into space. The heat begins. The quarantine barriers had been up for 6 hours when Sarah finally found what she was looking for. Buried deep in the xenobiology database's restricted sections, hidden behind layers of diplomatic encryption, was a single file on Luminoran reproductive biology. What she read made her blood run cold. Every 50 years, Luminarans underwent a biological process called the illumination, a massive surge of bioenergetic activity that triggered their reproductive cycle. During this period, their usually controlled bioluminescence would build to dangerous levels, releasing waves of energy that could interfere with sensitive equipment. More importantly, the process was typically triggered by specific environmental conditions on their homeworld. Warning, the station's AI announced, interrupting Sarah's research. Critical systems failure detected in Medical Section C, backup power engaged. Sarah's head snapped up as the lights flickered. Medical Section C, where Zix had disappeared hours ago. The quarantine barriers hummed ominously as she approached the environmental controls. Computer, give me Nurse Sixara's vital signs. Access denied. Luminoran medical privacy protocols in effect. Sarah gritted her teeth. Computer, as chief medical officer of this station, I need to know if any personnel are in medical distress. A pause. Warning. Luminoran life signs showing dangerous elevation in bioenergetic output. Current levels exceed safety parameters by 300% and rising. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The illumination wasn't supposed to happen for another 20 years according to Luminoran biological schedules. Something had triggered it early, and she had a sinking feeling she knew what. The database had mentioned that certain chemical signatures could accelerate the cycle, particularly those from compatible species. Like humans. The lights flickered again, more violently this time. Through the quarantine barrier's transparent sections, Sarah could see pulses of brilliant light emanating from Medical Section C, accompanied by the sound of medical equipment shorting out. Computer, location of other Luminoran personnel. All Luminoran staff successfully evacuated to containment facilities on lower level 8, except head nurse Sixara, who refused transport. Sarah's mind raced. The other Luminarans must have recognized the early warning signs and evacuated, but Zix had stayed to help with the miners, stayed to do her duty. And now she was trapped in an accelerating biological process that threatened both her life and the station's systems. The quarantine barrier suddenly crackled with energy as something slammed against it from the other side. Sarah jumped back, her heart pounding. Through the transparent panel, she saw Zix, but not the composed, professional nurse she knew. The Luminaron's skin was blazing with light that hurt to look at directly, patterns of color shifting so rapidly they blurred together. Her normally sleek form seemed to ripple with barely contained energy. Sarah, Zix's voice carried harmonics that made the barrier vibrate. You need to get out of here. I can't control it much longer. I'm not leaving you, Sarah said firmly, already pulling up emergency medical protocols on her tablet. Your bioenergetic levels are off the charts. You're going into acute systemic shock. You don't understand. Zix pressed her hands against the barrier, leaving glowing prints that slowly faded. This isn't a medical condition you can treat. It's... She convulsed suddenly, her skin flaring so bright that Sarah had to shield her eyes. Warning klaxons blared as more systems began to fail. The quarantine barrier's power fluctuated, its field wavering dangerously. Nurse Sixara's condition is affecting critical station infrastructure, the AI reported. Emergency protocols recommend immediate space evacuation of Medical Section C. Belay that order, Sarah snapped. She wouldn't abandon her colleague, her friend, to be ejected into space. There had to be another solution. Computer, give me everything you have on bioenergetic dampening fields. Processing. Warning, barrier integrity at 40% and falling. Sarah's fingers flew across her medical interface. If she could modify a neural dampening field to contain the excess bioenergy, maybe she could buy enough time to figure out a more permanent solution. But the readings from Zix's body were like nothing she'd ever seen, energy levels that should have been physically impossible for a living being to generate. Sarah, please. Zix's voice was strained, the harmonics becoming more pronounced. The others evacuated for a reason. If the barrier fails, if I lose control, the mating drive, you don't know what it's like. Actually, I think I do, Sarah replied, still working frantically on the dampening field calculations. Human pheromones triggered an early illumination cycle. That's why this is happening now instead of years from now. Which means, she looked up, meeting Zix's glowing eyes through the barrier. Which means I might be the key to helping you through it. The barrier crackled ominously, its field beginning to collapse. Sarah had seconds to make a decision that could cost her her life. But as she watched her friend struggling against forces beyond her control, she knew there was really no choice at all. Computer, on my authority. Drop the quarantine barrier on my mark. Sarah took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Sometimes the best solutions come from combining different perspectives, right? The last thing she saw before the barrier fell was Zix's expression of mingled horror and hope, illuminated by the impossible light of her transforming body. Then the world dissolved into brilliant chaos, and Sarah Chen, the promising young doctor who'd come to the stars to push the boundaries of medicine, found herself facing a crisis that would redefine those boundaries forever. Survival protocol. The moment the barrier fell, reality seemed to bend. Sarah's world became a chaos of light and sensation as Zix's uncontrolled energy field washed over her. The Luminaron's skin blazed like a newborn star, patterns of light rippling through impossible colors that human eyes were never meant to process. Computer emergency containment protocol, Sarah gasped, stumbling backward. Redirect all available power to medical bay environmental shields. The station's systems responded instantly, throwing up emergency force fields around the medical bay's perimeter. Not a moment too soon, Zix's body was now emanating waves of bioenergy that made the air itself seem to shimmer. Sarah, Zix's voice resonated through multiple harmonics, each syllable sending vibrations through the medical equipment. You need to. She convulsed, another pulse of energy shorting out nearby monitors. Sarah's medical training kicked in, pushing aside her fear and awe. I need you to focus, Zix. Your bioenergy levels are catastrophic. We need to stabilize them before they overwhelm your cellular structure. Can't think. Zix pressed her hands against her head, her form seeming to flicker in and out of normal space. The drive, too strong. Sarah dove for the medical storage units, her mind racing. Standard treatments would be useless against this level of bioenergetic disruption. She needed something unprecedented, something that could work with the energy rather than against it. Computer, start recording all biometric data, she ordered, pulling out various pieces of equipment. Full spectrum analysis of energy emissions, and give me a direct neural link to the medical database. Warning, the AI responded. Neural interface under current conditions may result in synaptic overload. Override safety protocols. Authorization Chen Alpha 7. Information flooded Sarah's consciousness as the neural link engaged. Medical data, xenobiological theories, energy containment protocols. She processed it all at superhuman speed, forced to by the urgency of the situation. Through it all, Zix's condition was deteriorating rapidly. The Luminarun's natural bioluminescence had become a torrent of energy that threatened to tear her apart at the molecular level. Worse, the mating drive was clearly taking over, making her increasingly aggressive. She kept moving towards Sarah with predatory grace, only to fight against her own impulses and retreat. The miners, Sarah muttered, her augmented mind making connections at lightning speed. The quantum inversions we used to heal them. She started pulling equipment from different treatment stations, rebuilding them into something new. Sarah. Zix's voice was almost unrecognizable now, layered with harmonics that made Sarah's teeth vibrate. You have to leave. I can't stop myself much longer. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah replied firmly, even as her hands shook while connecting delicate medical equipment. Your people evolved these cycles to share energy during mating. The problem isn't the energy itself, it's that there's nowhere for it to go. So we're going to give it somewhere. The device she was building looked like no medical instrument ever created, a hybrid of human technology and salvaged parts from alien medical equipment. If her calculations were correct, it would create a containment field that could safely channel Zix's excess energy. If she was wrong, it would probably kill them both. Computer, status of station systems. Critical failures spreading to adjacent sections. Life support at 60% efficiency. Estimated time to catastrophic failure, 18 minutes. Sarah's augmented mind processed the implications instantly. The station's systems weren't designed to handle this kind of energy. If she couldn't stabilize Zix soon, the entire station could be at risk. Almost ready, she murmured, making final adjustments to her jerry-rigged device. Zix, I need you to focus on my voice. Remember the Kraken captain, how we worked together. I need that connection now. Zix shuddered, her form seeming to blur at the edges. Can't, too much? Sarah, please, the hunger. I know, Sarah said softly, even as she activated the device's power systems. But I also know you. You're the most controlled, professional person I've ever met. You can fight this for just a few more minutes. The device hummed to life, creating a field of quantum-shifted energy around them. Sarah held her breath, watching the readings. If this worked, it would convert Zix's excess bioenergy into a form her body could reabsorb safely. If it didn't, Zix suddenly lunged forward, moving faster than human eyes could track. Sarah found herself pinned against a medical console, staring into eyes that blazed with alien light and ancient biological imperatives. The heat rolling off the Luminarun's body was incredible, and this close, the energy emissions made Sarah's skin tingle painfully. Trust me, Sarah whispered, refusing to look away from those inhuman eyes. Like I trusted you with the Kraken, we can do this. For a moment that felt like eternity, they stayed frozen in that position, the human doctor and the transformed alien nurse, surrounded by failing technology and impossible energies. Then Sarah reached out slowly and activated the final sequence on her device. The world exploded into light. Breaking point. The light that filled the medical bay wasn't just brightness, it was pure energy given form, a cascade of quantum possibilities all happening at once. Sarah felt it wash over her like a tidal wave of sensation, every cell in her body resonating with frequencies that shouldn't exist in normal space. Through it all, her improvised device hummed at an ever-increasing pitch, struggling to contain and redirect the enormous energies being released. Sarah's consciousness expanded through her neural link to the medical systems, allowing her to perceive the complex interactions taking place at a molecular level. Energy conversion at 30% capacity, the station's air reported, its voice distorted by interference. Warning: quantum field integrity destabilizing. Zix's form had become almost impossible to look at directly, her body a nexus of swirling energies that threatened to tear reality apart. The Luminarun's natural bioluminescence had evolved over millions of years to facilitate energy exchange during mating, but nothing in their biology had prepared them for this kind of premature, hyperaccelerated cycle. Cellular degradation beginning in outer layers, Sarah's enhanced mind processed the incoming data. Need to stabilize the quantum field before, her thoughts fragmented as another wave of energy pulsed through the room, this one carrying with it fragments of alien emotions, hunger, need, fear, all amplified to impossible levels. Sarah, Zix's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, each syllable a harmonic that made the air itself vibrate. The hunger, can't control, need. Stay with me, Sarah gritted her teeth, forcing her hands to remain steady as she adjusted the device's settings. The quantum inversion field is starting to work. Your body's trying to reabsorb the excess energy, but the frequencies are wrong. I need to. Her voice trailed off as inspiration struck. The neural link was flooding her mind with medical data, and somewhere in that torrent of information, a pattern emerged. Computer, reconfigure quantum field to match Luminarun's cellular resonance frequencies. Warning: suggested reconfiguration exceeds safety parameters. Probability of catastrophic feedback, 89%. Do it anyway. Sarah's fingers flew over the controls, making microscopic adjustments. And divert all remaining power from non-essential systems to the medical bay containment field. The device's hum changed pitch, becoming something felt more than heard. Sarah's enhanced perception showed her what was happening. The quantum field was synchronizing with Zix's natural biological rhythms, creating a feedback loop that could either save them or tear them both apart at the molecular level. Energy conversion at 45% capacity, the AI reported, detecting cellular stabilization in outer layers. It was working. Slowly, agonizingly, the impossible energies were being channeled back into forms Zix's body could process. But it wasn't happening fast enough. The station's systems were failing around them, and Sarah could feel her own consciousness starting to fragment under the strain of maintaining the neural link. Station structural integrity compromised in adjacent sections, the AI warned. Evacuation protocols initiated in surrounding decks. Sarah barely heard the announcement. Her entire world had narrowed to the readings on her medical interfaces and the swirling maelstrom of energy that was Zix. The Luminarun was fighting for control with everything she had, but the biological imperatives driving the mating cycle were millions of years old, encoded in the very foundation of their species. Focus on my voice, Sarah commanded, pushing through her own pain and exhaustion. Remember who you are, Zix. The professional who saved the Kraken captain, the colleague who's never lost a patient, the friend who stayed behind to help when others evacuated. Something shifted in the energy patterns. Sarah's enhanced perception caught it immediately, a subtle change in the quantum harmonics, a brief moment of clarity in the chaos. That's it, she encouraged, making minute adjustments to the field. Fight it, channel it. You're not just a collection of biological imperatives. You're a person, a healer, and right now your station needs you too. The device suddenly emitted a high-pitched whine. Sarah's eyes widened as she saw the readings spike into impossible levels. Warning: quantum containment field approaching critical failure. Cascade reaction imminent. Time seemed to slow as Sarah's augmented mind processed their options. The containment field was going to fail. When it did, the backlash would release all of Zix's accumulated energy at once. The medical base shields wouldn't be able to contain it. The resulting explosion would tear through multiple decks, potentially compromising the entire station. Unless. Computer, reverse quantum field polarity, full power. Warning: suggested action will result in. Override all safety protocols. Authorization Chen final override. Sarah's world dissolved into pure light and sensation as the quantum field reversed. The last thing she saw was Zix's form reaching toward her, energy patterns shifting into something entirely new and unexpected. Then everything went white. Human ingenuity prevails. Sarah awakened to the soft hum of medical equipment and the gentle pressure of a regeneration field against her skin. Her enhanced consciousness was gone, leaving behind ghost impressions of quantum data and energy patterns that already felt like a fading dream. Neural patterns stabilizing, a familiar voice reported. Cellular damage at 12% and declining. Sarah opened her eyes to find Zix standing over her biobed, the Luminarun skin now glowing with its usual controlled patterns. The nurse's movements were once again precise and professional, though Sarah noticed subtle differences in her bioluminescence, new colors and patterns she'd never seen before. "Welcome back, Dr. Chen," Zix said softly. "You've been unconscious for 26 hours. Sarah tried to sit up, but her body protested. "The station is safe," Zix assured her. Thanks to your rather unconventional solution, she adjusted something on the biobed's controls. Though I must say, reversing a quantum containment field while directly connected to station medical systems through a neural interface was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. Memories flooded back, the desperate plan, the overwhelming energies, the final moment of reversal. It worked then, the quantum inversion. Did something unprecedented, Zix confirmed. Her skin rippled with what Sarah now recognized as amazement. Instead of trying to contain or redirect the energy, you created a resonance loop that allowed it to collapse back in on itself. The resulting quantum implosion should have killed us both. Instead, she gestured to herself, and Sarah noticed more subtle changes. The Luminarun's natural bioluminescence seemed somehow deeper, more complex. Patterns shifted beneath her translucent skin in ways that suggested new layers of biological complexity. The energy changed you, Sarah realized, her medical mind already analyzing the implications. Changed us both, Zix corrected. The quantum field linked us at a fundamental level during the implosion. Your human genetic structure somehow stabilized the process, creating entirely new energy patterns that our scientists are still trying to understand. Sarah managed to push herself into a sitting position, noting the strange tingling sensation throughout her body. I can still feel it, like an echo of the connection. A side effect of the quantum resonance, Zix explained. But more importantly, your solution didn't just save our lives, it's revolutionized our understanding of Luminarun biology. The energy patterns you created, they've given us a way to potentially control the illumination cycle, to channel it safely instead of requiring evacuation and isolation. Just trying to save my friend, Sarah said with a weak smile. And the station, speaking of which. Minimal damage to adjacent sections, Zix reported, slipping easily back into her professional tone. Though I'm told the engineering team is quite interested in studying the quantum scarring patterns left in the medical bay walls. Apparently, they've never seen anything quite like them. I imagine there are a lot of things about this situation that are unprecedented, Sarah observed. How are the other Luminarans handling it? Zix's skin flickered with what might have been embarrassment. Let's just say that having a human doctor solve a fundamental problem of our biology, one we've struggled with for millennia, has caused quite a stir. The Luminoran Medical Council has already requested all your research data. They're particularly interested in how human neural patterns might be used to stabilize our more volatile biological processes. Happy to help, Sarah said, then winced as she tried to move again. Though maybe next time we can find a less dramatic way to advance xenomedicine. Zix's skin pulsed with patterns that Sarah now recognized as affectionate amusement. Indeed, though I must admit, your human tendency to devise radical solutions under pressure is impressive, if somewhat terrifying to experience firsthand. Speaking of experience, Sarah hesitated, then pressed on. The connection during the quantum implosion, I sensed. A great deal, I imagined, Zix finished for her. Just as I experienced aspects of human consciousness I never thought possible. It seems we've both gained new perspectives on each other's species. Her skin rippled with complex patterns, and perhaps on each other as well. Before Sarah could respond, the medical bay doors slid open to admit a delegation of station officials and what appeared to be several high-ranking Luminoran scientists. Their skin patterns showed intense excitement as they approached the biobed. Dr. Chen, the lead scientist, began, her skin glowing with eager patterns. We have so many questions about your quantum inversion technique. The implications for Luminoran medical science are staggering. Sarah caught Zix's eye over the delegation's heads. The nurse's skin flickered with a pattern that somehow managed to convey both professional interest and personal warmth. They would have much to discuss later, once the official debriefings were done, about quantum resonance and biological imperatives, about the boundaries between species and the bridges that could be built between them. But for now, Sarah settled back against her biobed, ready to explain how human ingenuity and alien biology had combined to create something entirely new. After all, isn't that why she'd come to the stars in the first place? To push the boundaries of what was possible, to find solutions that no one had imagined before. As she began describing the technical details of her improvised device, Sarah smiled inwardly. Somewhere in the vast database of human medical knowledge, there would need to be a new entry on the quantum stabilization of premature Luminoran mating cycles and its implications for interspecies medical practice. She had a feeling it wouldn't be the last such entry she'd contribute to the field of xenomedicine, not by a long shot.